Hello and welcome to this unusual video. Well, not that unusual, but it's not the thing I normally do. You can come to my channel for tutorials and reviews occasionally, but this time I have a one-off video on how do you explain board games. How do you teach a certain game when you have other players coming over who don't know it. Of course, my first tip would be put on one of my videos. Just let Terence explain it. That's what I make them for. But if you choose to do it in person, and why not? That's a very fun thing to do. Then here is my personal method. I'm not saying this is the way to explain board games. This is my way of teaching board games. I try to actually think. I did a lot of work into thinking, how do you communicate something in the best possible way? And I came up with my personal method. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it, that it sticks with people. It's very clear. So why not share it with everyone who's interested in doing their own explanations for other people, to other people. Well, for me, just a little bit of history. How did it come to be? The board game shop that I am a customer of used to have these dates called Learn and Play. And that's where you come to the shop and a particular game will be taught to you by the owner of the shop. And then you can play it. And on one particular day, there was a Learn and Play for the game of Vanuatu. It's that orange box that you can see there behind me. I came to the shop. It looked very nice and interesting. Unfortunately, the owner had just returned from Germany of the biggest public board game convention. It's called Spiel, and it's in Essen in Germany, the biggest convention in the world. So he did not have any time to learn how Vanuatu is supposed to be played, let alone teach it to us. I came back the week after, and the week after I always came for playing games with people there, friends and strangers. Very nice, but Vanuatu still was not learned and played. So at some point I just said to the owner of the shop, how about I take the game home and I learn how it goes, and I'll bring it back and you can have a learn and play, and I will be the one who teaches the other people. And he actually really liked that idea. I did. People were happy with my explanation. And he said, if you want, you can do this for other games as well. That will give me some time to deal with the things I have to deal with in my own shop. And I enjoyed that. I do like reading rule books. And I do like teaching it to other people as best as I can. So that's how I started to develop my method. And this is how it goes. So let's get to it. Normally, that's already a no-no. Don't, as soon as you start explaining a game, don't talk too much about, don't give it a huge introduction. If you want, you can say a little background story. That's if you want to. I don't. If it's not necessary to tell this whole plot, what the background of the game is, you are what does this one say? In the India of the 16th century, there's a whole game on the back. And it's nice. It's a lovely story. Most games have this. I recently saw a game that had an entire fairy tale in it. Fine, nice, but you don't have to tell it to players, because the more you say, I would view it as everyone's mind. As soon as you start explaining a board game, someone's mind is a glass. You can start pouring water in it, but at some point the glass is full. If you keep going, it flows over, and it's not in the glass, it's lost. It's all over the table, it's a mess. So as soon as you start talking about the game, people will listen, and that is basically when they start retaining the information. So the bigger introduction you give on the game, the more water you're already pouring in. So no need to do that. You could do it with more experienced players, because they will be very aware that you're just giving a bit of flavor already. And in a few cases, it is sort of nice. If you would play the game board, the board game Battlestar Galactica, that game is based on a big TV show. So in order to understand it, you kind of have to tell the backstory a little bit. But even then, just a little bit is well enough. So, one thing, before I completely start explaining how what my method is, I am already assuming that you, whatever game it is that you're trying to explain, you know it. You know that game perfectly well. It's not a game that you recently bought and you just perused through the rulebook. No, if you explain a game, you have to know it perfectly well. And the other thing is, have it set up on the table. Have it ready so everyone can see it, can touch it, you can point to it. Very important. So, know the game and set it up. I assume you already have done all of this when you're wanting to explain a game to people. So, skip the introduction story if possible, or keep it to an absolute minimum, except when you're playing with experienced players. Then, for me, very important, step one, the first thing that I say when explaining a game. The game is going to be this long, and then whoever has this is the winner. That's it. Let me repeat that. The first thing I start with when I explain a game, you are going to be playing for this long, and then this is the winning condition. Because to me that's very important. You can usually games will say the tutorial videos that I watch will say you are going to keep playing and you're going to be doing this stuff, you're going to be doing that stuff. For me personally, I'm like, well, of course, very important. What am I doing it for? I will have a hard time keeping the information that you're giving me if I'm not already fully aware of what it is that I'm needing all of this information for. What do I need it for? You can say, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that. Yeah, fine, but for what? Tell me what I'm doing it for. So start with that. I already know the end goal. You say, you want a drink. Let's say, well, there's this long road and then a corner and then there is this light switch. No, where's the drink? It's in the fridge. How do you get to the fridge? Well, first you walk and then there's a corner and the light switch. But eventually, you know, you want a drink, it's in the fridge. And so that's the same with games. What are you doing it for? And if you immediately start with, this is how long you're going to play. And you can repeat that later if someone asks. You can repeat it again during the game while you're actually playing it. Remember that the game ends when this happens. And then... So this is how long the game takes, and this is what it makes you win the game. Really, my personal method, leave out everything else for now. How long is the game, and what wins you the game? Next, you have to decide what you're going to explain first. You really have to think about specifically the game. Because I can't say next up you explain this. No. It really differs per game, so you have to think about it. There are several things you could explain immediately. Some games have a bonus scoring at the end. When the game is over, you get extra points for something. Is it worth saying this now? Will you understand the whole explanation of the game better if I tell you all of this information now? Or is it actually better to say there is a bonus scoring at the end of the game? You get extra points for several items, but I'll get to that later. First I'll explain and then you get to that. So what else is there to explain? Sometimes games are played in rounds. That is one thing you can choose to put ahead of everything else. So, first, We are going to play for this long, and this is what wins you the game. For example, we are going to play 5 rounds. Whoever has the most points wins the game. You get some bonus points at the end of the game, but that I'll explain later. First, I'll explain what is a round. Again, there are 5 rounds. This is a round. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. That is one thing that you could do if you want. But again, you have to determine it. You have to give it some thought. Another thing is, what do you explain? A player turn. What do you do when it's your turn? Because that either at what point you get to it, that's up to you to decide. But that is a very, very important thing to explain. You must include that always. What do you do when it's your turn? Because that is something I, as a player, really wanted to know. When someone explains a game to me, they're like saying, you do this, you do this, you do this. And I'm thinking there, but yeah, as soon as we get to my turn, when we start playing this game and it's my turn, I have no clue what I'm doing. I am an experienced gamer, so I'm confident that I'll learn it at some point. There could be someone at your table who's not that confident and will just either, clam up or bluff their way through it. Either way, they're not enjoying themselves. You have to give someone a really clear explanation of what they have to do when it's their turn. When it's your turn, you take one of these people, doesn't matter how you say the meeple, you take one of your people and place it somewhere on the board. And then you get the reward of whatever it says where you placed it. Keep it really simple. It's almost in a childlike way, but it's not condescending. It's literally what it is. You take one of your player things and you put it on the board, and you get the prize. You get the reward for whatever, for wherever you placed it. So again, I'm going to come back to the front. When you start explaining a game, how long is it, and what wins the game? Next, decide what you're going to explain first. The bonus points at the end. Are you going to explain a round? Are you going to explain a player turn? That's up to you. I don't know what game you're trying to explain, but I'm sure there's always an argument for why it's better to first say this and then that. Coming back to the player turn, always do that. You could, like I say in my tutorials, what do you do when it's your turn? What do you do when it's your turn? You really have to be clear about that. Skip the details. Absolutely. If it's something you know, as someone does not have to know immediately, just explain that somewhere when you're already 10 minutes into the game, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or when you run into it automatically, because that also often happens. You don't need to explain something. It will come automatically. And like, who wins in case of a tie? Yeah, save it for the last half hour of the game, the last 20 minutes, when it gets toward the end. Then you can say, in case there's a tie, there are some conditions that could make you the winner instead of the other person. Save that for later. You don't need to say that. That is one of the details that you can skip. Also, if you're playing with cards that have a text on it, do you need to explain the text? Or do you, because the text is on the card. Usually a card is quite self-explanatory when it comes to what's written on it. The other things that you should explain is like if there are icons, what are those icons on the cards? That you can say, but if a card has text on it, like when it's your turn, play one of your cards and do whatever it says. The end. And whatever it says, that's up to the player during the game. And if they say, I'm not quite sure what this card means, they will tell you. They will say, oh, I've got a card here, but I'm not sure what it means. And then you explain it to them. And The last point, actually, we're already there. Well, it's 15 minutes in, but still. Repeat. And this is why we're already 15 minutes in the video. Repeat yourself and speak clearly. Personally, I have watched tutorial videos on YouTube by other people who explain board games, and yeah, it's usually fine. But again, since they don't start with how long is the game and what wins the game, I'm already sort of gone. I've got one foot out the door. And the other thing is, a lot of tutorial videos are made by American and Canadian people, also fine, but they do have a tendency to sort of speed things up, and they talk like this. Well, when we're playing the game, we're going to go here and here and here. The tempo is quite high. I follow it completely. I'm fluent in English, but I'm like, slow down. You're pointing at things, you're saying things. I'm watching this for the first time. I'm trying to take it in. It's information. Don't speak too fast. And next, repeat. Absolutely repeat yourself, because you're only saying the basics. So it's okay to say those basics a few more times. Like, what is around? First you do this, then this, then this, then this, then this. So again, around is first everyone does this, and then they do that. Say it again. There's no harm in saying it again. Especially when you skip unimportant details, then you can spend that time in repeating the things that are necessary to understand and play the game. So speak slowly and repeat yourself. And I'm actually going to repeat myself right now. What is my method for explaining board games? Step 1. How long is the game? And what wins me the game? Step 2. Decide what you're going to say first. Are you going to explain bonus scoring at the end? Are you going to explain a player turn? Are you going to explain rounds? It's up to you. Then skip the details. Yeah, in case of a tie? No, don't care. I'll get that information later when I actually understand the game. Now that's more water going into the glass, and that's actually not the bit of water that I wanted in my glass. So, and then really clearly explain a player turn. What do you do when it's your turn? And finally, repeat yourself and speak calmly and clearly. And that's it. I've got a few more social things for you, if you would like to hear those as well. First is, one social thing is, don't get a game that is going to be way too hard for a particular player. If someone has never played a more modern board game, like they're familiar with Monopoly and Risk and all those games, I wouldn't introduce them to Rajas of the Ganges. Absolutely not, because it has a board game with a really high number of places on the board where you can place your worker, and you have to explain every single one of them. So that is already lost. And apart from that, you also have your own player mat where you can purchase tiles and place them on your mat, and you have dice as well, and you use those dice in combination with your workers. No, if you're not an experienced player, you will be completely lost when someone tries to explain this to you. And I have made this mistake. I have pulled out this game thinking someone was up to it, but actually it was better to first go for Lords of Waterdeep, which is also a worker placement game, and then you can work your way up to this one. So yeah, so know your audience. That's already important. Next, when you have explained the game to someone, in another video that I watched, it said, when at the end of the game you were the one who explained the game and you are also the winner, then you didn't do it right. I don't agree with that. What I think you shouldn't do is really, really try to win the game. No. Why? Because you're trying to play it with other people who are playing it for the first time, so they already have a huge disadvantage. But to say that you shouldn't win the game, now that I think is a little bit on the condescending side, as if you're playing with a small child and you're like, okay, I'm gonna let you win even though I'm better at this. No, you actually give them a bit of competition. What you can do is tell them how to win. Tell them, if you say, well, actually you could do, if you would do this, then you're actually screwing me over because I really need this one thing, but you have first choice. So if you take the thing, not only do you get a lot of points for this and that, but you're also blocking me. And of course that will players say, well, in that case, I will. So do that. Play against yourself through the other players, but don't deliberately try to lose. In my opinion, that's a bit silly. So just help them all the way through. When they ask questions, if they ask the same question 3 times, answer it 3 times, and so on. Next, if someone is explaining the game that you already know, don't interrupt that person. Let that person explain. You can do other stuff. You can maybe assist or something. Someone call it be the flight attendant. Now that I agree with. That sounds nice. Or go get drinks. Also very important. Keep your guests liquored up, without liquor, and snacks on the table. Yeah, I think that's about it. So with the social cues, don't pull out a game that you know is going to be too hard for people. Don't try too hard to win the game. Actually play against yourself in giving the advice to the other players. And if someone else is explaining, keep your mouth shut and let that person do the explaining. So basically that is my method. I'm sure when I've recorded this video I'm going to think of many other things I should have said. But that's about it. I'll give you a short recap. Tell them how long is the game and what wins the game. Start with that. That's my method. And then they know exactly I've got this time frame and this is my goal. This is what I'm doing all of this for. Whatever it will be, I'm doing it for this. And then decide what you're going to explain. Are you going to explain a player turn, a round, or bonus points at the end? Really be clear about a player turn. What do you do when it's your turn? To whoever this person is, give them a little bit of confidence that they understand what they're supposed to do as soon as they're in the spotlight. And skip the details. If it's not important to explain right now at the beginning, say it later, during the game, when they're already playing and everyone's getting a sense of, I know what I'm doing. And finally, repeat yourself and speak clearly and calmly. And that's it. How long did I take? Almost 25 minutes. That's actually longer than it takes to explain an actual board game. Probably not this one. You're going to get a tutorial for this anywhere in the upcoming weeks, I think. But yeah, that's another thing. Time-wise, try to, like I said, you skip the details, but you do repeat yourself. But on average, most explanations don't need to be longer than 15 minutes. Bigger games can take 20 minutes, between 20 and 25. If you go over half an hour, I think you probably will be going on for too long. I once had an explanation of 45 minutes and I didn't understand it one bit because it started with the details and from the details it went to in sort of what do you do when it's your turn? Well, not more like if you go here you can do this, if you go here you can do that. But are you telling me that's where I'm during my turn I'm going somewhere? Okay. and I ended up not winning the game at all, and I just wanted it to be over as soon as possible because that was not a very pleasant experience. Also playing against someone who wanted to annihilate all the other players, and that person was also the one explaining it and the owner of the game. That's not very nice, so try to keep it under 15 minutes if possible, and otherwise don't go too much into overtime, and I think you're good to go. I would really like to have any feedback you have on this. If you have maybe other tips, if you said, oh, I always do this and that seems to work perfectly, or if you say, well, I don't agree with what you're saying right there because, use an argument. Also, if you have seen any of my videos and you're like, okay, I watched that one, but I kind of got stuck there. I don't quite know what you meant, or could you go more into detail? I'll try to explain it to you in the comments, but feel free to respond. The door is wide open. But always, I will explain all board games by my personal method. But I do like to hear from you how it's working for you so far and what works for you when you explain board games. Thank you for sitting this one out, and I hope you keep watching my videos. Thank you very much for watching them so far, and hopefully see you for the next one.